What's up, guys? It's me, Jesse, and we are finally back with more Tower of God content. Thank you guys so much for being patient. I really had to reread Tower of God again with kind of an Androssi perspective to come out with this Androssi analysis, and it's the longest one yet. I have so much to say about her, and I never thought that I did. I never thought about her that much, so this was a surprise to me, and it was a real challenge to make this one, so I hope you guys enjoy the analysis that we have coming in a minute here. I know what you're going to say before we get started. Jesse, her name is Endorsi. What are you talking about? And honestly, I'm gonna level with you guys. Androssi was the name that I heard first, and quite frankly, I think Endorsi is kind of an ugly name, so I don't like saying it. Make sure to stick around to the end of the video to see some announcements about the ToG content coming your way. But right now, I've kept you guys waiting long enough. So without further ado, let's finally take a look under the hood of Androssi Jahad. Do you know what it feels like to have to fight for everything you want? Have you ever wanted to take it all for yourself, doing anything and everything in your power to get there, not caring what happens to other people on the way? If your answer is yes, then congratulations, you have the smallest sliver of the resolve necessary to become a princess of Jahad. There is no one in the tower who better represents that determination, scrappiness, and cynicism better than Androssi herself. After decades of kicking and scratching her way to the head of the table, Androssi enters the tower ready to double down on her upbringing and flex the power she earned through decades of work and suffering. But in meeting Bam, Anak, and Rachel, she begins to understand the loneliness of her philosophy, coming to view her role and her power more critically. Though her character growth is certainly divisive, Androssi Jahad is determined to regain her independence and individuality, defying the restrictions of her royal blood. Out of all the regulars on the floor of tests, Androssi is the one who best exemplifies the laws of the tower, making her somewhat of an antagonist during the position classes and hide and seek. The real princess to Anak's fake, she takes pride in her blood and toys with most people as she fights with them. She's clever and confident in her abilities, but her position puts her so far above the other regulars that it isolates her. The first casual conversation she overhears is about making friends, with the apprehensive princess off to the side surrounded by speech bubbles. At first, it's hard for her to comprehend the idea. Like so many others, she views her testmates as rivals and knows how impractical it is to befriend them since they'll be competing against each other later. While it seems a bit cynical at first, knowing her upbringing gives us a much better understanding of why she won't make friends and why she's obsessed with shoes. It's no coincidence that our first look at Androssi's isolation occurs in the dining hall, because it's not the only one she knows. In fact, her experiences in the dining hall form the core of her ambition and, arguably, her original reason for climbing the tower. Despite the luxuries she receives in the inner tower, Androssi had a pretty scrappy childhood, quite unlike most other princess candidates. We don't know which family Androssi was adopted into, but it looked nothing like the lavish castles we see in flashbacks with White, Aguero, or Kaiser. Instead, Androssi was locked in a brutal competition where she and her sisters needed to prove themselves every day for food, and it's in this manner where she was molded into the person she is today. The killer instinct, cattiness, and selfishness that continue to influence her in the tower all started with the simple desire to not starve to death. When she talks to Bam about it in hide and seek, it seems like she's learned to compartmentalize the trauma her training must have brought, and now that she's in the tower, it actually looks like all the struggling she went through back then was worth it. And why wouldn't she feel that way? Because of her victory over her sisters, she got to taste good food, gained legendary power, and earned herself an easy climb up the tower. She can kill her enemies with ease and can forego the emotional baggage that comes with burdens like friendship in a cruel place. This cynicism makes her the perfect regular, and sets her apart from the likes of regulars such as Paracule, Hatsu, or Aguero. Androssi carries no affectations of friendship, grandeur, or nobility with her into the tower. She knows that what she does is evil, but for the sake of climbing, she's willing to throw away her humanity. The only way she knows how to climb is by stepping over the backs of everyone in her way. Also in the anime, she totally murdered all of her siblings. Now I know I make Androssi sound like Ted Bundy's cannibalistic sister, and while she's certainly a piece of shit, it's important to understand she had this mindset beaten into her over years or decades. And in my opinion, one of Season 1's most beautiful subplots is breaking Androssi out of this toxic mindset. In fact, when it comes to Bomb's role as an outsider to the cruelty of the tower, nobody makes his innocence shine better than Androssi herself. He, Bomb as well as Anak, is a persistent thorn in her side, and both are key in showing her that there really is more to the climb than simple competition. It's about finding and protecting what you desire most, whether it's at the top or on the way. The first step on Androssi's path to enlightenment is meeting Anak. Initially, she's hostile to her, and through their dynamic, Androssi is the one to clue us in that the average princess is actually a bit of a dick. Yuri's the exception. While her older sister is quite the free spirit, Androssi herself teaches us that princesses are saddled with rules and restrictions. They can't fall in love, they fight with each other, and they're burdened with the expectations of quickly making a name for themselves as they climb the tower by necessity. They're the spotless face of the empire, but that also means they're tasked with purging its unwanted elements. And so Androssi's antagonism with Anak is natural on multiple levels. On the surface, Anak's existence is forbidden, and Androssi's certainly not the only one around with an interest in eliminating her. But on a deeper level, Anak represents a slap in the face to everything Androssi suffered for. Anak was born out of love, into a family, while Androssi's was ripped away from her. The family she knew most of her life was violent. After enduring that family, she was rewarded with the power of Jahad. But Anak never had to put up with any of that. She was simply born with incredible power. Lero Ro would probably say she was lucky. She got to know what it felt like to be loved by her family, and Androssi barely had any memory of it. And so while Anak's rage at this loss carries her up the tower, I think Androssi wants an answer for why she'll supposedly never get to feel that freedom and comfort. That's why she questions Anak about her mother and belittles her power. She wants to know if being a princess is worth it for what she's been through and what the role demands. But Bomb, a foreign entity to the tower with no understanding of its laws, shakes her perspective and questions her solitary lifestyle. He compounds on the doubt Anak's existence brings into her life. They're almost complete opposites. Bomb is friendly, pure, and innocent, while Androssi is aloof, jaded, and even a bit seductive. In her own words, she's a bad girl. Up until Bomb begins breaking through to her in hide and seek, she's more than happy to cheat and kill to pass her tests. But as Bomb continues to talk to her in the cafeteria, brings her food, and harps on about Rachel, not only does her belief in Zahard's dogma continue to break down, she also begins to reject this sentiment deep within herself that other people can't be trusted. Hide and seek as a whole is an incredible juxtaposition of the ideal versus the real, and before Ho gives Bomb a taste of reality by beating the shit out of his mental health, it's Androssi who first tells Bomb he doesn't belong and breaks the illusion of camaraderie. As she explains her past to him, she also notes the fundamental difference between them. Whereas she's willing to do anything to climb, Bomb doesn't understand her lack of empathy after gaining so many friends of his own. And he certainly doesn't understand the life anyone leads in the outer tower that births regulars in the first place. Not yet, at least. To Androssi, the tower isn't for someone content like him. It's for selfish, desperate people like herself. And whether it's a true reflection or SIU's masterful presentation, this marks a shift in how Androssi views herself. Up until now, it's been easy for her to brush things off, stay focused, and get rid of whoever she needs to. But in the darkness of the arena, a shade of loneliness is cast over her actions. There's no pride in watching her brutalize the regulars in front of her. She's not having fun with it like she did with Anak. It's just her and her enemies in the darkness, abandoned by the only person who didn't judge her. I think seeing Bomb in his determined state disillusioned her actions. She finally calls herself a bad guy, and accepts that she's no different than the men she's competing with. But there's shame in her confession. She isn't like Bomb. She can't trust people, and they look at her differently. With nobody on her side, the only thing she can do in the moment is retreat into herself and beat the shit out of Hong Shenhua. Or in the anime, kill him. Pussy. I think that moment in hide and seek pushes her to start connecting with the other regulars more, starting with Bomb. Bomb finally tells her about Rachel, and trust begins to build between them. You can see Androssi warm up to him in their training sessions and show some subtle compassion. This is also where Bomb made her open her eyes to her own loneliness. She reveals that other people scare her. They make her nervous, and this is no doubt due to having to compete with them for her entire childhood. Understanding this and realizing that she can be more comfortable around Bomb and the others is a great change for her, and shows that she hasn't been completely broken by her upbringing. But that's only the start of it. The last examination forced Androssi to make a choice that affects her entire climb. Opting to take the Guardian test with everyone is one thing, but her upcoming choice between her duties as a princess and her personal desires marks a crucial shift in Androssi's character, guiding her journey for the rest of the story. Lopobia Ren gives Androssi a sadistic choice. She can either put her reputation on the line, everything she suffered for, and sully her name as a princess, or she can just kill Anak. The old Androssi wouldn't have any trouble deciding, though she'd surely be irritated with her orders. But after her training and tests, she's come to empathize more with her teammates, and can ultimately bring herself to defy Red and choose to help Anak. But it wasn't an easy choice even then. SIU does a great job illustrating Androssi's internal conflict in this moment, as she struggles to overcome her past self and the restrictions placed on her. The easy choice is to kill Anak, and she tries to comfort herself into doing the deed by envisioning her new friends as guests at the dinner table, just like her sisters. It would only be natural for her to do away with them, take their food, their ambitions, and run with them to the top of the tower. But then she thinks back to that scene with Bomb and remembers that she doesn't have to feel that way anymore. There's no need to feel insecure now. She has other people that she can finally trust and doesn't have to be alone. This gives her the courage to break free of the past, and luckily Yuri's intervention gives her the necessary strength. By the time Androssi's confrontation is over, she's gained a new resolve to climb the tower with Anak and date the dead kid who showed her she wasn't alone. More importantly, this resolution symbolizes her desire to follow her personal desires rather than simply the path that was laid out for her. By climbing with Anak, she can find her own happiness and understand the price and the reward of rebellion. She can climb for her own sake and find her own answers. Androssi's arc in Season 1 is a beautiful story of revelation and redemption. It is extremely unfortunate, then, that after another 400 chapters, the only answer she can find is Bomb. After Season 1, as Androssi departs with her team, there's a lot of room for her to grow and form new relationships. But by the time she debuts again in the workshop battle, it's hard to say she's grown at all. According to Shibizu, it's hard for her teammates to even talk to her, and while she goes along with their plans most of the time, rarely do we see her interact with them. But of course, the crux of her character arc in the workshop deals with her feelings on reuniting with Bomb. This isn't a bad thing necessarily, and leads to some decent moments with her in the arc. Her first encounter with Juvial Grace fills her with doubt, and she has trouble dealing with the hope of her friend being alive. And her reunion at the party shows her restraint, as she puts Bomb's safety over her own desire to reconnect with him. It's understandable that just hearing Bomb's name brings back memories, and that she'd be set on finding the truth about him. He was important to her and all of his other friends. As we found before, he helped bring her out of self-imposed solitary, and it makes sense for her to be hung up on someone that made such a big impact. It's nice to see her mix that cocky and cruel personality with a sincere desire to be with someone who makes her feel more complete. And pulling one over on Vargarv using Bong Bong shows a great evolution of those scrappy tactics of hers, as she races to rescue Bomb. So all of this builds up to our highly anticipated date. Before we get into this, I would just like to point out that Androssi says she sent him a text on his phone when they all have pockets that everyone uses to communicate in the first place. What is the world design here? I think the most important part of this date, though, was defining what Bomb and Androssi's relationship is based upon. And what we got wasn't too far off the mark. I think it's fair to say at this point, she's earned some time with him. Twice in the arc they were forced apart, so I guess third time really is the charm here as she drags him off. What I really like about this dinner scene with her is that she actually questions and reflects on her feelings for Bomb here, wondering if she really likes him. Having to recall the memory helps reassert what she appreciates in Bomb, and while nobody really needs a reason to like someone, making her feel less alone is a pretty decent reason to get attached. The effect that Bomb has had on her could have been a solid foundation for her personal growth. But unfortunately, by the time we get to Name Hunt Station, it seems SIU has turned Androssi's attraction into an obsession. Though she's one of the most important protagonists in the arc, Androssi seems to become a caricature here, as her negative traits are exaggerated and her rashness dominates her decisions. Her failures before the arc begins put her in a very insecure position for most of her time here, and she lashes out frequently. It's honestly more suited to Anak, and it's sad to see that the security Bomb gives her has been inapplicable to any of her other relationships. But hey, we all know what really counts here, huh? At first, it's nice to see her getting along with Shibisu, but once the train arrives, Androssi's quick to focus on nothing but Bomb, which is a real shame because there are great scenes showcasing how much her other teammates really care about her. Her possessiveness is explainable here, but it relegates her to a more antagonistic role that turns her into an obstacle her friends have to work around. And SIU doesn't give her any opportunity to grow here, or play off of any chemistry. It doesn't help that her definitive scene in this arc might strike some people as crossing a line or two. It really shows how spoiled Androssi is and how little she's grown working with a team where she's the strongest. She's still quick to resort to violence when she doesn't get what she wants, but at the same time we do have to consider how insulted she must feel. Bomb doesn't mean to, but he really is weighing her own life against his interest in Rachel, and it comes across as awfully cold-hearted for Bomb to prioritize chasing a hypothetical purpose for himself rather than helping the friend in front of him. Bomb showed her she wasn't alone, but now he can't be there for when she needs him. I wish this aspect of their relationship was explored more, and that we saw more of how Androssi processed these emotions during the arc. Instead, SIU furthers the narrative that it's Androssi's love and flirtatiousness that sets her apart from the other princesses. It only becomes apparent that this is what he really wanted to focus on once we get to her confrontation with Lilial. Androssi is set up as the thin edge of the coin between the twins and Kaiser, as one who gets to have her cake and eat it too. Unlike the other princesses, Androssi's not as manipulative or really even as intelligent, but her abnormal climb has led her to question the system that gave her power. She's interested in men and uses her beauty as a tool, but still insists on keeping her rights as a princess. She got the power Kaiser was denied, but keeps the humanity the twins aren't allowed to have and makes friends with the enemies of Jahad now. She struts this line delicately, flaunting her princess status on numerous occasions and having no problem with the attention it gives her, while at the same time trying to sneak off with Bomb or even sometimes give him the bad touch when no one's around. Meanwhile, Kaiser tried to have the same relationship and was mercilessly shamed and exiled. I'm not saying she shouldn't or it's unfair, but only now is her own behavior compared with the other princesses, setting up the obstacles Androssi has to face for the rest of her climb. She's taking back the freedom she lost, and the twins have become jealous on top of their normal rivalry. But SIU's choice to make Bomb the focus of Androssi's attention closes too many doors for her character to be satisfying. He doesn't build on her dynamics with her teammates, nor does he progress any secondary agenda with her beyond purely climbing the tower. Even worse, there's no meaningful interaction with Bomb once Name Hunt Station really gets rolling anyway, so it's way too easy to read most of her scenes past Season 1 as her just clinging to Bomb without building a relationship. If Androssi was truly the independent, rebellious princess trying to climb on her own terms, I think it would be better to focus more on her interactions with Anak, or see other characters question her feelings more harshly to raise the stakes when she breaks the restrictions placed on her as a princess. Her fight with Lilial introduces that conflict, but doesn't actually explore it in the least. A stronger relationship with Anak could at least help draw parallels between Androssi and Anak's mother, as they both pursued love, and it could also provide a foundation for Androssi uncovering more knowledge on princesses to strengthen her own reasons to climb. And while SIU brings Androssi to the floor of death to do just that, we unfortunately see how simplified Androssi's motivation has become. Androssi leaving Anak, the person she wanted to climb the tower with in the first place, to go to the floor of death is bad enough in and of itself, but at least she says she wants to meet Garam, and that is important for her personal rebellion. She gets the chance to meet another runaway pair of shoes, to understand the consequences of siding against the Empire, and to learn the history of her royal family. But SIU squanders that opportunity, instead further simplifying Androssi's motivation down to her affection for Bomb. Androssi's growth in Season 1 was due to so much more than that, and the scene she gets with Garam here doesn't do justice to the struggle she faced in sparing Anak, reflecting on her sisters, or making enemies of all the other princesses. There's an argument here, of course, that Androssi didn't need any big revelations. If she's someone who climbs for her own personal reasons and tries to escape from the pressures around her, then maybe all she needed was the personal affirmation she got from seeing Garam. But if that's the case, why bring her along in the first place? Why not test her bond with Anak and force her hand that way? Or why not expand on that as Lily all grills her about Viola in their fight? It almost seems like SIU gave up on writing a compelling arc for her here to consolidate Floor of Death and keep the focus on Hell Joe. I reread the arc to make sure I didn't miss anything, and I was actually shocked at the complete absence of Androssi. It really is like SIU wanted to give her something more to do here in the beginning, but decided against it because he couldn't figure out how to keep the pace from dragging. And the key question Garam poses, whether Androssi likes Bomb for his personality or his power, is redundant. We've already seen why she likes him on the date. Unfortunately, her trip here proved to be a needless trek. This simplification of Androssi's character isn't just reflected in her actual plot presence, it's even evident in her face. Look at Androssi's expressions in Season 1. She gets angry, curious, smug, gentle, cruel, shocked, and lonely. In the workshop, there's variety in her reactions as well. But once Name Hunt Station begins, notice how many of Androssi's panels are just her looking irritated. Her entire emotional palette has become this scale of irritation, and it's not compelling to see her placed in situations where she'll just react the same way to everything. I only see two general ways to fix this. One is to simply give her new dynamics, have her riff off of other characters in the background, and actually give her some chemistry with anyone, literally anyone, because she certainly does not have any with Bomb right now. The other, and my preferred choice, is to give her side objectives when she's in arcs. The Floor of Death would have been an amazing example for this. Androssi didn't find Garam until the end of the story, nor did she react to Yuri and her ordeal with the 13 months at all. Presenting her with more nuanced information in the princess situation would have been an amazing way to inject new life into her character and broaden her perspective. Instead, she ran around Hell Joe's castle to no effect. Sad. It's become apparent that while SIU makes it Androssi's goal to further develop her relationship with Bomb, Bomb always has a higher priority, making her spiteful and insecure. Her insecurities come to a head in her confrontation with Rachel. We've been building up to this since Workshop, when Androssi made it clear that she wanted Bomb to prioritize her at the date. In Name Hunt Station, Bomb refusing her made Androssi jealous of Rachel, and now that they're face to face, she's ready to destroy her competition. It must be painful for her to know that one of her best friends is longing to be with someone else, but ironically, this confrontation is the one time where Rachel actually comes out on top, and Androssi receives some well-deserved criticism. Androssi's pettiness and violent tendencies have long been flaws that she's failed to overcome, and Rachel is the only one to point out that the only reason she's forgiven is because she's the one who's close to Bomb and on his team. While Rachel's perspective lacks nuance, an observant reader might see beyond Androssi's comedic bits and realize Rachel's largely correct. To anyone not on her team, Androssi's a total monster. Just look back on the Floor of Tests and look again as recently as the Name Hunt Station. And funny enough, the only way Androssi knows how to respond is with violence. Many love the idea of giving Rachel a reality check here, but more than anything, this scene proves that after years of climbing, Androssi is still the same spoiled, feral girl she was in the banquet hall. And it's sad that only Yuri can point it out in any capacity besides Rachel. The Hidden Floor does add some interesting nuance to her princess selection, but ultimately squanders another opportunity to develop her motives. It also puts her at an all-time high on the scale of irritability I mentioned earlier. Honestly, I can't really blame her this time. Meeting Han Sung-yu and getting stuck in quarantine are certainly very irritating. But the worst part for her is that once again, Bomb largely ignores her, barely giving her the time of day even as she tries to protect him and saves him at least once. Not to mention her sworn enemy is there. She plays third fiddle to Data Viol and Han Sung as the escape takes priority, giving Androssi nothing to do until the Snake Charmer reveals himself to her. Now, her backstory with the Snake Charmer certainly colors previous interactions and does further explain why Androssi is more prone to going against the other princesses. Despite becoming a princess, she hates the Snake Charmer, almost certainly because he took away her parents, and with that, a relatively happy life. He threw her into a new family and a life of battle and torture, and may be ultimately responsible for many of the fears that plague her. He even helps explain why she's so hostile to Rachel. I said Rachel lacked nuance, and this is it. Rachel sees the spoiled princess, but has no idea what was taken from her in exchange, or that such a life was probably forced upon a naive child. But there are two issues with the presentation of her past. The first is another instance of SIU's lack of commitment. Androssi's conflict with the snake charmer is utterly ignored after her flashback, and we don't get to see a single reflection on her part because for some reason, SIU really believed a training arc and sworn enemy battle royale would be more interesting than Androssi actually dealing with her past and sorting out her bitterness. I feel bad for anyone actually invested in Androssi at this point. 3 arcs in a row, SIU has given her ample opportunity for growth and has failed to follow up on it. In the Hidden Floor, Androssi only recalls her past. She doesn't learn anything new, take any chance to develop, nor does she confront either the man who took away her family or the data of the man at the head of it all. It's unfortunate, but she just isn't growing. SIU doesn't let her. The other issue with her past is that, honestly, it's unnecessary. While knowledge on who selects princesses is a good thing, SIU did a great job establishing why Androssi would act the way she does all the way back in Season 1. Princesses can't love. Most people want to be with someone they love, and being denied that is good enough for an adolescent to want to rebel. People have done so for less or that reason itself. Androssi was adopted into a cruel family, and that in itself is enough to resent her past and know she missed a happy childhood. Everything we got in the story of Androssi's first parents was actually something we had already. And that's really as far as Androssi's come in 500 chapters. Built up as a rebellious princess who wanted to break free from the rules that bind her and support the people she cares about, she's now little more than a less useful Aguero, obsessed with Bomb, homicidal towards Rachel, and unwilling to reflect on her goals or overcome her flaws. Even as she climbs with a completely different team for much of the series, SIU spent nearly all of her panel time building up a one-sided relationship with Bomb and no one else. Failing to build out her other relationships and develop her original goals has taken away most of her agency, leaving her with little to work towards when she appears. And without any progress or meaningful conflict, it's hard to empathize with her or root for her as she keeps trying to get closer to someone who doesn't care about her nearly as much. For all of the missed opportunities with Androssi Jahad, I think it's fair to say she ends up being one of the most disappointing characters in the entire story. She's defined by her abrasiveness and poorly masked insecurity, and was at her most interesting as the lonely witch of Season 1 where she was slowly broken down. But to see her now, as petty and insecure as ever despite having more friends than she ever dreamed of? Why would a reader want to support that kind of ignorance? Going forward, I'm not optimistic on Androssi's development. SIU is firmly committed to her becoming attached to Bomb, and I think the rest of her conflicts will come from her sisters and the Empire trying to separate them. But the emotional stakes aren't quite there. Androssi doesn't really love being a princess, and her hand has already been forced to side with Bomb as of last station, so there's hardly anything for her to think about if the Empire tries to threaten her. Putting her in physical danger is one thing, and is guaranteed if she comes into conflict with Princesses or Red, but I think what's really key for her now is emotional growth. She needs to be tested. Hypothetically, there are a few good ways to do this if SIU felt like it. If a princess arc is still coming and we get a regular perspective, then Androssi and Anak should certainly take center stage. I'd be excited to see growth in their sisterhood because I think Anak has grown in Androssi's mind to represent something more important than even Bomb to her, and that's the proof of freedom. Anak Jr. represents the proof that Anak Sr. was happy, and that her love was precious. So whether or not Androssi tries to be with Bomb, her teammate is the proof that she can choose her own destiny and escape a life she never truly wanted. She can finally have a sister she doesn't have to fight. Choosing to stick up for that sister, rather than a crush with bigger fish to fry, is immensely compelling to me because the two already share a sisterly chemistry, and Androssi's choice to climb with Anak still carries forward the lessons Bomb taught her about togetherness. And if Androssi got the chance to meet the Snake Charmer in the real tower and was able to come to terms with their twisted past, it could help deal with her insecurity and come to terms with her loss. We'll definitely see Androssi reject the Empire somewhere down the line officially, and face off against her callous sisters and the assassins in Red, but we can only hope that SIU treats her future decision with the care and precision he showed her so long ago. Androssi has the chance to face her flaws, find security in her team and friends, and build a thriving network to support herself. But if SIU keeps her on her current trajectory and continues to prioritize her feelings for Bomb, then she might never amount to anything more than a pair of shoes on a different shelf. thank you guys so much for watching this new analysis. I would love to hear your thoughts on Androssi in the comments, where you think her character is headed, whether or not you like her, your favorite Androssi moments. It's all valuable, and I'd be happy to respond in the comments and have a discussion. Going forward, there is another piece of regular ToG content that I'm planning to upload. Every week on Tuesdays, we actually have a ToG Tuesday stream on my Twitch channel. I would definitely encourage checking that out if you want to get involved in a live discussion on ToG and have maybe a little more of an informal conversation. Every week we discuss the recent chapter. That lasts about a half hour, and then we have either just a general discussion on some kind of character or theme in the story, but also every so often we have an interview. And this time I'm very happy to upload my latest interview with Nya D Hemmingz, another great ToG YouTuber, so definitely check his channel out if you're looking for more content while you're waiting for me to upload more analysis. I haven't really advertised this here on the YouTube channel because I didn't want people to think that I was substituting the analysis out for anything, because I still want that to be kind of the main focus here. You know, I don't want people to think that I'm not as invested in creating these long-form videos anymore. But definitely if you're looking for something more consistent, this is going to be the thing to see. I also have 2 other analysis videos in the works right now. One is about the most recent arc, Dark Change, and the other is about the thematics of ToG and what ToG is really about at the end of the day, so I'm really excited to develop both of these and show them to you as soon as possible. Once again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.